Welcome back, gamers. Today we're going to be checking out the massively successful Kickstarter game, Tiny Epic Kingdoms. I just got this in the mail and we've played enough games that I kind of feel comfortable reviewing it now. Of course, if you already know how to play the game, you can go ahead and click on it to jump right to my conclusions. Otherwise, let's find out what's in the box and how you play the game.
It's board games with PeedMont.
Just as an FYI, I purchased the deluxe edition of Tiny Epic Kingdoms, so it has a couple extra things in here that you might not have in your copy. But inside of Tiny Epic Kingdoms, you will find, first of all, check this out. Drawings on the inside of the box. It's cool. This box is rugged as hell, too. Can't believe it. Anyways, find one color instruction booklet. Very nice. Explained everything well enough. There's quite a bit of text in here, but they have some pictures to show you how it goes, and it was easy enough to figure out. Then you're going to get just an absolute ton of stuff. You're going to get meeples. 7 meeples in 5 different colors. It can be played up to 5 players. You're also going to get a bag of tower tokens and magic book tokens, and then the shields, which are kind of action tokens. We'll get to those in a minute. Then you're going to get custom tokens for magic, which are the stars, corn for food, and these red blobs that are bricks. It's enough for each player. You can get 5 custom 12-sided dice. This is for determining your war. You have one side that is the peace flag, and it goes up to 11. And as nice as these dice are, I'm kind of sad that you don't actually get to roll them in the game, but they're very nice. Then you're going to get this massive starting player castle token. It's not really necessary, but it's kind of cool. Looks like mine's a little crooked actually now that I look at this, but whatever, it works. We just kind of set it out because it's cool. We set it out next to the tower card, I guess is what this is, and this shows as you build the tower you get points. You set this out, you get an action card, and this is where those shields go to determine which actions you take. It's the same on both sides, very cool. Then you're going to get, what was it, I think 8 different region cards. Basically this is going to make the map. Each player is going to get 1 in front of them. And they're all unique, which is cool, and they're all actually 2-sided, which is also very cool. So you can really never have the same game. A little Settlers of Catan like. Then you're going to have the individual race cards, and because I have the deluxe edition, I have a couple extra ones. We got the elves, the dwarves, orcs, humans, lizard folk, goblins, halflings, dark elves, centaurs, Valkyrie, satyrs, undead, merfolk, constructs, the Order of Gamelin, and the shapeshifters. And finally, in the deluxe edition, you get this little punch-out card of expansion pieces. Basically, you can put these down, face down, following these exploration tile rules, and have come some little variants, add a little additional replay to the game. Pretty cool. You'll set up the game something like this. Note, this is a 2-player game. It was kind of easier to understand the 3 and 4 and 5-player game once you kind of understand the 2-player game. So I'm going to go that direction. Basically, you'll give each person a race card. You'll let them pick up to 6 resources. In this case, they kind of recommend 1 stone, 2 magic, and 3 food, 3 grain. We'll talk about that later. You give each person a magic book to keep track of how much magic they have. You give them their 5 extra meeples and put 2 meeples on 1 region on their territory. In this case, we have both of them starting in the mountains. And for the 2-player game, you actually set out a lost territory and fill it with neutral mobs, and that's a place that you can fight over. We'll talk that in a minute. You put out the tower card and the 2 tower icons. You give each player the 12-sided dice for war, and then you put out the action card and the 5 shield tokens, which we use to take actions. We can take a look at the anatomy of a race card real quick. You'll see you get your book token, which is a little book, and this will keep track of your magic. You start with 0, so it kind of starts below, but as you gain magic, you gain special abilities. In this case, you win ties during war. You can spend corn for war, which is pretty cool. For the orcs, you have this kind of track up here that keeps track of. The red thing keeps track of your stone, green keeps track of your magic, and yellow keeps track of your corn. And that's matched on the region cards. As you can see, the yellow areas give you corn, the orange or red give you the brick, and the green forest gives you magic. And then finally it shows the picture, their name, and on the bottom there's a reminder that when you're in war, each point of magic counts for 2 towards war, and each point of stone counts for 1 towards war, and we'll talk about that in a second. This action card is the main focus of the game, basically. On your turn, you get to take one of these shields and pick an action that everyone will take that round. So if I pick patrol, I do my patrol first, and then everyone else follows suit. Of course, if you can't do that action, you can always take resources, and we'll look at that in a second also. After you get to choose which action you get to do if you're the starting player. Once everyone's taken that action, it passes to the next player, and then they get to choose one. And this is where the strategy comes in. Maybe you want to research when they don't have a lot of magic. Maybe you want to patrol when they don't have anybody to move around. And this is kind of the strategic element of this game. Say I'm the first player, and I pick that patrol action as the orcs. Patrol allows you to move one of your meeples 1 space within your own territory. Basically, I couldn't jump across over to here to the Lost Land. I have to move my own. In this case, maybe I move mine to the fields, grain fields. At this point, my opponent can do the same thing. They could choose to move their person off into a new land. Obviously, not crossing rivers. You can't jump across, but you could jump over here into the forest. Or if they didn't want to do that, they also have the option of collecting resources. As you saw on the sheet, let's see if I can make some room here. Bonk. The dwarves start off with some things, and they're on the mountain. They would get a stone. You don't get 2, even though there's 2 people here. You only get 1 for each territory that you control. So in this case, if I decide not to move my guy, I want to collect resources, I would get 1 stone. I simply would move that stone piece up 1 to indicate that. Now it's my opponent's turn to pick something. Maybe in this case, they know they have some extra stone, and they can use that to do something. They're going to choose the build action. The build action lets you climb up the tower card. My opponent then spends 1 stone to move their orange tower 1 up the list. As you can see, as you move up the tower, you get more and more points. If you make it all the way to the top by spending 6 stone on 1 turn, you actually get 10 points at the end of the game, which is a massive amount. The other options on the action board are to quest, which means move one of your meeples from a region that you control to another one. So I can move my guy on my own place, maybe over into my opponent's spot. Next, you can research, which allows you to upgrade your magic, which I showed there in the beginning. Additionally, each level of magic you achieve gives you 1 extra point at the end of the game. Next is the expand ability. You can spend, basically, if I need my 3rd meeple, I need to spend 3 corn to get him. For my 4th, I would need to spend 4, and etc. Of course, you can only take 1 action per turn, so maybe even if I had 7, I couldn't do my 3rd and 4th, I can just do my 3rd. But you need, so that gets more expensive as the more number of guys you go. The same thing happens for the tower and the magic. Basically, the 2nd level costs 2, 3rd level costs 3, etc. for both. Finally, the last thing you can do is the trade ability. This lets you spend, if I want to spend 3 corn, I can get 3 magic. And this is really important because for some things like war, magic is more important. And for other things, expanding, obviously, corn is more important. So you have this ability to kind of mix and match even if you don't have a great setup on your starting board. Finally, the last thing to kind of talk about before victory conditions is the war in this game. Say my opponent chooses the quest option and moves their guy into my territory. At this point, we go to war. And on each player's card, it kind of shows that 1 point of magic equals 2 points for war, 1 point of stone equals 1 point for war, and corn equals nothing. And in this game, you don't roll dice or anything random. You basically take these dice and determine how much you're willing to spend to fight. It's basically to fund the war. So for the orcs, maybe I want to spend 4. That was always blue. And that would be either 4 ore, 2 ore and 1 magic, or 2 magic, since magic counts as 2. The same thing, maybe my dwarven opponent decides that they were going to spend 5. 2 magic, 1 ore. That's everything they have. We do this in secrecy, and then when we're done, we put it out. The higher number wins, and basically I would lose my meeple, and they would gain that spot. Not only do I lose a person, they also have a foothold in my area now, which isn't great, and they can start getting grain from that when they decide to take resources. Of course, you can tie, and in that case, the defender wins. The other option on this dice is the flag, which is an alliance. And this can happen in the 3 or 4 or 5 player game, where you can coexist peacefully until you go to war with that person again later, perhaps, with one other person. In the 2 player game, there's no alliances, you can only fight, and the flag counts as 0. Finally, there are a number of victory conditions that you check for at the end of each turn. Basically, if anyone has reached the top of the tower, the game will end. If anyone reaches their 5th level of magic, the game will end. And finally, if anyone has all of their meeples on the board, will end. And those can be triggered at different times. When one of those conditions is triggered, you play out until the rest of the shields have been played, and then the game is over. This allows another player to have some reactions to what has just happened, but not much. And you can try and plan it out so that you do your last thing. Maybe I'll use my last action to expand and put out my last guy, so my opponent can't respond. Once that final action has been taken, you basically tally up the points, basically 1 level for level of magic, up to 5. 1 point for each meeple you have on the board, up to 7. And then not 1 point, but the points basically that are shown on the tower card. If you get to the top level, you get 10, 7, 4, 2, 1, or 0. In the 2-player game, any meeple that you get onto the Lost Land in the middle territory also gets 1 additional bonus point, which gives you some reason to fight over this middle ground. But in the 3 and 4-player, that doesn't exist because there's enough war and fighting and dynamics going on without it. And that's basically Tiny Epic Kingdoms. It's a really interesting mix, and I still really can't even, say how I feel about it, I guess. It seems like as the most basic level, it's kind of this mixture of Settlers of Catan and Small World, where you have this fantasy feeling and you're getting resources based on where you've plopped yourself around. You're not really rolling dice like in Small World. It's just kind of, are you willing to pay more to win this victory? And that adds a really interesting dynamic to the game where somebody might be getting close to get that last level of magic to end the game, but then you go to war with them. And they have to determine if they want to survive and lose a point because they're losing a guy and give me another spot I can get resources from, or they're going to pay that magic to combat that war and try and win themselves. And that's a way you can kind of force them to spend some points that maybe they were saving to finish their tower or finish their magic. It's really, really interesting. And in the 2-player games, it feels a little heavily biased towards magic since magic counts for war and special abilities. But as you get more and more players, and the war's going on, and you don't have magic to fight every single war, different strategies come about. You start to focus on that tower that gives lots of points. You start focusing on putting up more meeples that you can use to get more resources. So things change, and I like that each level is different. I do really like it at the 2-player level, but like I said, the game is a really weird feel. But I like that about it. I can't put my finger on what it is. It doesn't really feel like a big 4E game. Honestly, it feels something very different, almost kind of this abstract strategy kind of way, the way that the actions are played and the timing of everything and the fact that you're not rolling dice or anything like that, which I think is a good thing for it because there are a lot of little bits and pieces that kind of throw me off. I guess first are the components. To me, meeples inherently mean like one dude. I think I would have almost rather it been cubes if I wanted it to feel big and massive, because I feel like I literally have 2 dudes hanging around. And then when I expand, it's like they're doing a dirty deed, and then another baby comes out somewhere. It has this really weird feeling. Not so much like I'm building a kingdom, but I guess maybe it should have been called Tiny Epic Skirmish, because that's almost more what it feels like. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it fits a really neat, game niche where this doesn't really exist so much. It's kind of light war strategy exploration game. And my only other complaint with the game is that the art is not... I mean, it is what it is. I Kickstarter backed it, and I knew what I was getting, but it's just... I mean, you can kind of see. I kind of wish they had used some of the money they used on all these big, fancy components that don't really add a whole lot. I mean, this doesn't really... I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be, and the little book is... I thought it was like a foot at first. I don't know. They could have used some of that money to upgrade the art a little bit, I think, which would have been nice, because it does... Once you played it with them, it does start to feel kind of like this abstract strategy game more than a gigantic kingdom builder, and that's something I like about it. There's always kind of maneuvers. How many points am I willing to spend? Where can I move? What order should I do these actions? What my opponent's going to do? And I think that's neat. And that's, even though these were kind of negative things to me in the beginning with, because I was almost expecting this grand 4E game, that I think it just changed it, because I almost can't even articulate what it is about this game, like how I feel about this game, because it's such a weird, interesting mix of games. So all that being said, don't take this kind of weird review to mean that I don't like the game. I actually like it really quite a lot. It's very unique, and for the $16 that you pay to get this, you get a ton of stuff. I love that there are all the different expansions that have different abilities and have different powers, and they feel different and unique, even after you get that first level of Magic, especially, suddenly you're kind of really unique. I kind of wish that each one had a special power to start off with to make them unique, rather than having to spend magic right off the bat to get that kind of special power. But I do like as the game progresses, you feel more powerful as a person, as a kingdom, and you have this differentiation happening. That maybe okay, I'm the dwarves, I'm going to really focus on the tower because that's my ability. But at the same time, my opponents kind of expect that, and I can use that against them to do some other thing. I like how the actions work out in this kind of weird abstract strategy way, and the movement in the war, and it's not random at all. You know what you have, you know what your opponent has, you know you can beat them. You can even add a little bit of negotiation in there in the 3 and 4 player games, or 5, I think it comes with 5, where you can try and negotiate for an alliance and peace, which is interesting and adds a whole other thing to the game and lets people who are behind kind of get back into the game if they've been decimated by war by another player. I think the components are awesome. I don't know if they necessarily fit. You know, I love that I get all the cool stuff. I love opening this box and having just tons and tons of bits and pieces. Like I said, I almost wish, from this weird kind of theme standpoint, that there were cubes rather than the meeples, but it was all really, really nice, and I'm glad that they got enough funding to get all of that. I think that's really cool. I really like the tiny little box, that it comes in this little box. It fits in here, and it has a really neat feel for how much stuff you get. I think the theme is nice and it works. I think it's fun and strategic. I think the cost is great. The time it plays in, about 25 to 30 minutes, is perfect. And it works on all the levels from 2 to 5 very differently, and I like that as well. I think if you see this, or if you have Kickstarted it, you will like it. If you're into that kind of game, don't go into it expecting a big Civ game, you know, or anything like that, because it's not. And I don't think that's a bad thing.